So this is a war from today. My goal here is to be going between two point of views here. I'm gonna be going between Bop's point of view. I'm gonna be going between Beva's point of view. The focus isn't gonna be on the actual individual players themselves, but it's gonna be on the armies and how they move. EU in general likes to play for space a lot, and space is like a very like big concept to how they're playing. That concept is being like emphasized more and more on NA. So I want to focus this like kind of VOD review mostly on space and kind of like positional awareness, specifically on the outside, like on the point phase. When it comes to fort, to be honest, the macro matters a lot less. It's sort of just set plays of what people do. So we'll see how that kind of goes from both people here that I'm going to be looking at, like roughly side by side. But yeah, so let's start off here. Uh, you guys should be able to hear this. This is already something that's like very, very different compared to NA. Is you see people get up here very, very aggro, very, very fast. I know of what I've been told from the EU people is they have IGVGs that will haste up here. I don't really see that like IGVG haste thing. Melees here are on cleanse because they're on point. If I actually look at this from a Bevu's point of view, he's also got double cleanse, so he's being greedy. But I would not be surprised if some of their IGVGs kind of hasted past. Okay, they're not really hasting past, so maybe I was lied to there. But I think that haste aspect is actually like kind of underrated and very, very good if you grab that space early. If you can like push this line up to like top of the point like early and you get all that space, it just makes it so that they have to work through more space to get to the point to start ticking. It basically makes it so that you're gonna able to defend for longer because they have to effectively go through more people. They do get like a lot of free space, so I don't exactly know how. You could see that they're really trying to push up for tempo. Like this like Bop is like a point player, but they're not like prioritizing the point early. I think this kind of makes sense when it's like very, very low tick. It's more important to play to grab that space and then kind of circle back to point once they actually start getting that pressure there. If you look at it if like from a Bevy point of view, which I'm not going to be hopping the entire time back and forth. Like I'll probably just stick on the fire stuff for a bit. See, have any comms? No, he doesn't have comms. But you can see how they're like really controlling this edge. This is like an EU thing specifically, where they'll really play for that outside and they're gonna slowly wrap it in. But NA has been starting to do this as well. You've seen it a lot with the New World League wars actually, because a lot of the New World League strats are mostly inspired from EU to be honest, because the EU leadership has generally been putting in more work. So people have been kind of copying that same mindset. That being said, I think Supple and Dropouts both run a similar thing where they play like outside in moreover than like inside out. You'll see in like lower end wars, like I did a war in El Dorado yesterday, where the point fight was like literally a 40v40 or something like ridiculous like that. Like you don't see that at like at a normal level. The reason why you don't see that is because if you give up the space on the outside, your healers will just get farmed, they'll get wrapped, and they'll turn to point and they'll try to nuke point. And usually it's easier to get the nuke off on point if you go first and the other team is clumped at the beginning. So if you start being more on point, you're inherently at a disadvantage by the nukingness aspect. That being said, within like the first minute of the war, no one has a detonate, so it doesn't really matter for that instance, but it will matter immediately after that. Bevu's not doing a ton here. That should have probably been a kill. But from a macro perspective, again, like they have taken this entire like right lane, they have pushed their line up to the other team's back line. The kill squad is kind of like not hard carrying right now, but it's like getting a lot of like work done, pulling a lot of aggro. They have the bonfire to like LOS aggro as well, so it's just like very easy to get value there. Now their healer is actually being contested, so they have to kind of respect the space again, and then they can push back up once the healer is not contested anymore, which they're going to do here. Bevu's on the strong side, so this should be the easiest spot basically in the entire army to be playing though. So I wouldn't really take it too much of value here. That's value, but the thing with fire staff is like for the most part is like that combo is like very common. You see a lot of the times with that combo where people just get hit and like down to 1 HP, and there's a reason why like for a period of time like you just played musket with this because fire staff would go in, you get the guy 1 HP, musket hits this guy once he dies. And it does have enough accuracy to be able to do that, and you can cross map people with it, unlike a like a more projectile weapon. So that's something that definitely could have been like a little bit better there, but there's not really an angle for that to actually happen here, right? So like I think this is just basically forcing the detonate, just detonating to because you have detonate, and it's not actually like looking for a ton of value, to be honest. It's like mostly like a pad oriented thing. Like it was good and like it looked like it could have gotten kills, but it didn't actually amount to anything because it wasn't like kind of done with his teammates. Like even if there's a fire step through like a pillar of fire on top of him where he was landing, like that would result in kills there or fireball. Just needs something. Which he's 150 con right now, it looks like, so. This is pretty aggro from a fire stuff. He does control the space though. Like he actually gets control of this lane. I'm gonna hop back over to Bahp, kind of skip in a little bit here and see how this fight was going. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. There we go. This you can kind of see the macro honestly better from this perspective, so maybe I just stick with Bahp for the most part. Assuming the VOD does not do this, which it doesn't normally do that. But it is getting it from like a database, so it's a little bit dependent on like internet and stuff like that. So maybe I'll come back to that and I'll look at Bevu again. You can see how they're like starting to lose this edge though. Like in terms of like control, like probably left of this line, like they have control. Then in the middle here, it's like red, and then after that, it's like kind of contested space, and I don't really know who has control. Looks like blue technically has control because the tick isn't going up, but they definitely lost that like inside lane of from Bond, and they're losing their back line as well. Like if you wait for them to turn around here, like this entire back line is basically red at this point, which is not a great sign. Usually when a backline turns red like this, you need to push up. You need to like look to get on the other team's healers. Looks like they mostly won like red side from like a wrap from Oppo though. So those healers aren't super accessible. The best spot to really contest them from is like an angle like off here, which is something that can be hit from respawns from the red side. So it's not ideal. But there is a way to kind of contest this push where you go for the healers off of when like in between respawn waves so that they can't actually contest you. And then from there, you can get on the healers and you can push out the back line and get the kills. Bevu's getting value controlling this lane, though. He's not really getting forced by anyone. Gets an, get another detonate thing going. This one I like a lot more because he's actually going for a target that someone else is already on, so it's just very inherently easy for his teammate to follow up. That's like very, very good awareness to go for a target that is already being hit. Because the problem with that detonate again is like usually people end up living with like 2 to 3k HP, so you just need a little bit more damage. So as long as you have one other person that's doing something while you're going for that play, it will generally get value. They still have the edge control here. They still have the bond control. They really need to control this space, because otherwise they're like kind of suspect to early rotate to C. That being said, it is like very, very heavily contested. I wouldn't say they like completely own the space. Let me see if the bot VOD is working yet. It's not working. Let me try to get that, refetch that. That cannon's annoying. He's playing the cover well too, though. Like the LOS from there. They're getting an early rotate off to C of red side, so that's gonna pull some people. B is losing at this point, so they if B starts losing about this, like usually 25%, you're like kind of fine. But once it gets to like 50%, you need to start pushing aggro and you need to start wrapping their backline. Once you wrap their backline, usually at 75% roughly, then you turn and start looking at point, and then like 80 would be like an 80 would be a melee all in. 90 would be like a melee and well, it'd be like more people generally, and then usually 95 is like when everyone actually gets on, or they just give and go to a side point. But like I would like to see Bevu like kind of starting to push that bond side, starting to look for that wrap right now, which he starts doing. From his army perspective, like people are generally pushing up into this space now. Like you can see the space is somewhat contested, which is good. You don't want healer. If you can push the healers back 25 meters, this is good. But if you can't push the healers back 25 meters, then you're still going to be able to free cast points. So this doesn't do as much as you think it would. He's trying to save his teammate, but his teammate's honestly kind of already dead. I think it makes more sense to be looking to the left a little bit more. Peels back. He's kind of forfeiting up that space, which I don't think he could control as a solo, so this kind of makes sense, but it's a little bit scary that he has to give that up. He's going for this early, but he doesn't actually have his detonate, or he doesn't have his burnout, so I think he just didn't think about that because that was a waste to detonate. He looked like he was looking for his burnout there. Nothing really happening here. I'm gonna go see if the Bahp stuff is working yet. Okay, it's working again. Perfect. Maybe not. You just can't touch this at all, can you? Okay. So this is like a little bit further back than from Bevu, but you could see like that same thing I was talking about here where this like middle lane is kind of lost. Like this spot here is kind of contested. Looks like they own like kind of a little bit of this space is like blue, like a little bit, but generally red has more people up here. Red has more people on the bond side in general. I would say most that space is red's control, but the actual oppo bond, like you can see they have blue up here. I imagine they're kind of playing for a wrap on this side. So it's not like it all is lost here. It's just like from a space control perspective, the red is pushing up into space and they're getting contested. This is a giant clump on point. Usually when it comes to like point clumps, the first team or the team that goes first is going to get a wipe. But usually when this happens, you want other people from the other team. Like once you see, say you have like a blue team here, and then the red team goes for push and surrounds the blue team. Then you want like more blues coming in, dropping showers behind these reds. And then like once the detonates explode, then the blue melees go for the grabs, try to push onto that red clump. That red clump is going to get sandwiched. They're just generally going to die because they're surrounded by people. But if you're not in a position to do that, pushing early is a very safe and effective play to hit point. And most people aren't in a position. The reason why they're not in a position to go for that play, right, is because they force their quad out and then they go to point. If you force your quad out and then you go to point, there's not going to be a spot where the other team is going to be able to hit you afterwards easily because there's not going to be people in that space because you forced your quad out. So that's like something where it's just kind of a procedural thing where generally that just gets value if you follow the right order. But if you were to force the point early per se, you could very easily lose that, even though you're gonna potentially kill the point team. At that point, you're just kind of hoping that your SNS like lives, has the shield up for long enough for people to get out, but it's like really sketchy. From like a point perspective, you have two options here. You could step here, which is what Bahp calls. If you like are going for this play, you don't actually want to run straight to this clump. You want to circle around over here, drop a shower behind, because the red team is naturally going to want to back up into friendly space, because this part of the map is red space, right? And this part of the map is blue space. So red will want to try to get the red space to stabilize. So you want to try to prevent that with an ice shower. So I think Bahp is going slightly too direct here. He also goes for a Scream first. That's just like generally not good in my opinion. I think Shower gets more value than Scream. The Scream, I find it to be best now to like hold it until people are 50% for that like 1 second duration boost, because that's not affected by Freedom. That tends to be higher value. That being said, from a macro perspective, I think that was the right call. They're trying to swing here at this point. Like most of this point is kind of contested in terms of space. He calls for the crash. So like in terms of space right now, if you were to look at it, like this is contested space. Then there's like a little bit of a pocket of red over here. Like that's a little bit of red, but they're surrounded by blue, and then they have blue wrapping. So that should be a very easy thing to hit point because they have the space from the quad groups to actually go in and hit the point, and from there they should look to declump. So Bahp is shot caller, right? So he's making that macro calm. He doesn't actually have people that are looking to hit point though. He's making that calm and nothing is happening. I think everyone's just kind of dead, to be honest. At this point, it looks like red is going for a nuke on them because the respawns just went out, which makes sense. Yeah, usually if you're like worried about that, like being collapsed on, like there's a red clump right there that probably should get blown up. To be honest, I don't know how that's not getting blown up. You just have the blues rush in there and you drop an ice shower to prevent people from pushing behind you. That gives you a little bit of space. So as a blue player, you always have a way out. You always have a way in. Very easy to trap people, get in and out with that kind of thing. I like to do those pre-ice showers a lot when going for those like more risky plays. So this is a very free ice shower. I don't think he's going to see it. He doesn't have the ice shower. But that was like a very free opportunity to say if he has ice shower here, like again from the concept of like we want to go back to your own space when you get forced out. You drop an ice shower here, red spaces back here. Then this clump, the red players who naturally want to get out, they'll get caught by the ice shower. It takes about 80 stam to get through an ice shower. Very easy wipes, very easy kills from that perspective. So that's something that like definitely could be improved from a macro perspective. Like this is all decent, but people are able to move like way too freely. There's not enough ice showers that are being used to prevent people from getting in and out. Be interesting to see if that's a theme. From Red's perspective at this point, you have basically the entire map control. Like you have where is the red line? Let me go back a little bit. So if you pause it here, like Red's line is like probably here. To be honest, around every single sector of the map. From yesterday, if you guys were like listening to me like calm like very heavily versus that dropouts versus Supple War, I kept talking about having a high line. This is what I mean by having a high line. In soccer, from a defense perspective, or football, depending on what area of the earth you're from, the high lines, like a common strat via defense, will catch people offside. Offside isn't like a penalty like in this game at all, but if you're offside, you will just generally get pressured by a lot of abilities, and that's space that you can't easily access. So by pushing your line up further, you just generally allow yourself to get more value. If your healers ever get to a spot where they could step on point, it's basically a guaranteed win from a point perspective. But but you really have to push your line high when that happens, and you have to also control those pockets of space behind you, otherwise you could be susceptible to a crash. So this is really good again, but there's no ice shower behind them. They have free casting healers because they don't have any space there. Like they're still fighting the bond, right? And you see this from the blue perspective too, where point is ticking. But blue's not going to be worried about point because they need to get control of their quads before they worry about the point, which makes sense. The only problem here is from a point perspective, that very easily can mean that you get wiped. So you have to be like really aware as a point player during this spot, which would be like roughly a 25 to 50% tick. Like people are starting to build that wrap. So really 25 to 75% tick. It's kind of fake tick in a way. Like people just kind of let it happen usually at that point. Point team is just looking to live. Other people are looking to take positioning, and they're looking to crash like a little bit later. I would not be coming into the point here. This is sketchy. This he should have died there, to be honest. He didn't have cleanse when he went for that for the vines. Generally, like that's a defensive shower. Yeah, he's using the shower I was talking about earlier, where you drop it early so that you have a way in and out of the fight. So he knows how he could be aggro here, and he can run through the shower and be aggro over here, and people can't really follow him. That's something you see Mia do a lot in IGVGs, and I probably get made fun of more of the time for doing it at this point because I like to run around people at the ice shower and just circle around people for absolutely no reason other than it's like kind of fun to do. But that's the idea behind it: is you can access both sides of the fight like very freely. People can't really contest it. That was a good opportunity for a scream. He was a little bit off for the guy that was under half HP, but it's fine. He's talking about regaining the outside. You can see here again how they're not winning this. It looks like they're focusing point a little bit too hard, to be honest. Usually this 25 to 75% you don't really care about, so you could build that wrap so you're in a position to hit point and try to nuke it later. He's calling that out exactly. That's just good calls. I hate that shower, but I think I'm gonna stop talking about ice showers for a little bit because I've talked about it like 4 or 5 times. You see from like a macro perspective too, how the healers here are able to step like pretty high. They're kind of free casting here for the most part. You see ice pylons back here too. They're very well protected. If they want to be really smart from the power perspective, if blue doesn't have point presence here, and you want to be really keen on getting this point ticked, you actually have healers step up here. They play the edge of the point. They start ticking. you have your line push so that you give them basically no space. At that point, they have to go to healers. They create kind of a pocket where they're surrounded by people like over here, over here. The blue team has to step up to contest the healer, so they're somewhere in the middle. You turn around and you nuke this part of the point. It's a pretty easy point wipe, and at that point, it's like free tick. But that's sort of a set play that you see some companies do, particularly Supple does it a lot, where they push their healers up very, very far on attack. Healers are really interesting because you would think that you want them to be safe, but if you have people having to hit healers, that often takes the pressure off other parts of the army. And if your healers are, say, standing in a sacred, they don't need to be constantly healed. You could just generally get value off of that. He's calling the respawns as a shot caller, but it has a respawn bot, which is a little weird. This is a very late call, but it's reasonable. The other thing to point out here, I'm probably going to swap to Bevu in a second and then try to catch back up. Usually when there's like a respawn that comes out, like 10 seconds before, that's not an S. But 10 seconds before a respawn, I would say you generally want to declump. You want to have like people here, people here, people here, people here. Like you don't want to all be in the same spot. And then when that actual respawn happens, and you want to look at the clumps and try to nuke them, so you'd be trying to nuke this clump per se. But if you start in one spot, it's very easy for you to get nuked off the respawn by other team, even with an SNS. And to be honest, even with an SNS right now, you typically can't live more than like a 5 to 10 man det push versus a competent melees slash like kind of a top end war, which I imagine is going to be the same case here for EU since this is like the best competition that EU has there. So it's like a spot where you generally don't want to be clumped up at first. You want to like kind of be split, don't give them an opportunity to really get an easy clump light. If they singled people out and they start dogging them, that means that they're going to have to group up to be dogging that one person. They've just formed a clump and then you nuke that clump, which is why usually being split off a respawn call is a little bit better than being stacked. That being said, it's like you can stack to a certain degree. It's just if you stack and they have 5 to 10 people looking at you, it can be kind of sketchy as an SNS. Where you will live, people around you probably will live, but you'll lose your stam more likely than not unless you have really, really good stam management. All right, I'm gonna swap back to the other VOD now. We could look at Bevu this whole time and see what he's been doing in terms of like building that ROP, or if he just kind of stood here. So Bevu again is on that strong side, so you would expect this side to generally be very easy to build that ROP, and this would be the side that people would want to build that ROP on because they want to be rotating to see if they mess up the ROP, so this is like the side that they should be playing the hard win. It doesn't look like they really allocated more groups to this side, which I find to be a little bit surprising, but he's contesting the space. I just wouldn't say he's like pushing for more space. Like if I were him, I'd be going down this lane to the right. I'd be pushing all the way I can. Okay, he's thinking about it now. C is also taking to a high percent, which is noteworthy. Yeah, now he's forced out. But he took that space, right? He forced the player to come to him to force him out. I don't think he has to be this scared. He's playing like very, very conservative, very scared now. I think he could probably play that tree line, to be honest, but maybe he's LSing healers. But you see, they tried to build that ROP, they kind of got denied, and they just haven't done anything with it. At this point, it looks like BS lost, to be honest, because they just lost that ROP completely. They're still playing on their side of the point. They should have been able to push up there, but did not look like they were able to. Usually that's like a spot where you'd have your melee zergs through, but it did not look like that was happening. That was a good detonate, but unlucky on the connection there. At this point, it's lost. They're just going to hand it over. Makes sense. So you could see him try to go for that rat play, but it didn't look like they had enough people going for that rat play to actually make it work. Skip forward a little bit. This right side, it's not like, at this point, it's like not really like a right is necessarily your strong side, but it's usually right is a little bit stronger than your left. On this kind of part of the map, or your outside is a little bit stronger than your inside groups. That's because healers tend to prefer casting from the outside, since the other team is going to be spawning from B, running onto the inside part of point. So that spot's usually a little bit easier for them to access, which is why it's a little bit preferable to hold that outside space. You can see he's pushing really, really aggro, but because of this tree branch, it just makes it like really, really awkward. He's not actually able to back up. He also pushed off tempo of his team. His team was getting crashed from the other side of the road. He's clearly just out of position here when he goes for the burnout play, which is unfortunate. And he just catches at spawn. Fast forward back in. At this point, it looks like C is like already lost, to be honest. Looks like they just hard lost that initial rotate on the backside here. Looks like they had free access to basically rotate from their backline over to this oppo, crash behind them, and then pinch this blue team that was standing in the middle here from both sides. And then that wipe right here basically makes it so that red's able to push up, take all this space. Red's able to control this space at this point, and at that point, it's like very, very hard to do anything from a blue side healer since you're forced to play it in their road, which is going to be heavily contested space. Basically, a lot of words for don't lose your oppo side quickly. At this point, if it were a supple strat, they would be trying to wrap on this bond side and then push in behind and then going for a nuke on point. The reason why you'd go for a wrap on bond side is because the whole other team just played to hard win this oppo side, right? So that means this oppo side is now red's strong side. This spot over here is kind of contested space, a little bit weaker, so it's a little bit easier to push from the oppo, wrap around, look to nuke point. That being said, Bevu is going for the contested space. Looks like he has access to somewhat consistent heals, but his entire team is kind of low, so I'm surprised he went for the contested space rotate, to be honest. They are getting some value off of it. At this point, they have to start looking at point, though. It's too high tick. You need to go looking at point. It's like 85%. This would be a Deado burnout, look at point kind of pray moment, but it was just way too late. He's off by this by about like 10 to 15 seconds, to be honest. Like here, he should be looking for this play. But he looks at this play like 10 seconds later. From a bot perspective, let's see how that rotate call goes, see what he calls. The other thing I think a lot of people make a mistake about is C is usually the easier point to defend, but a lot of people like to defend B to the last possible tick. I think there's also like a relevant strategy where you let B, like if B gets to 75% tick here and you don't have space to be able to recrash B, you just call the B off at like probably 80-85% tick. Just rotate over to C, take your losses before the respawn. If you don't actually have that wrap form to be able to create this play, there's no reason to try to force it because C is the easier point to hold. I just realized I had browser audio muted. He's calling for the retake though, like to wrap and look for it.
We should give it. Why is their flex group farming our backline? What the fuck is this shit?
Oh, we overripe.
Give up B, give up B, give up B.
So it calls to give up B, but it's just too late, right? Like, when this gets to 75% tick and he doesn't have a wrap, B is already lost. You want to be looking to wrap at like 25 to 50% tick. And like 75 is usually about this time where you start looking at point. 80 to 85, like after an initial hit is like where you determine like, do we rotate off? Do we actually commit here? But they're just like very, very, very late to this.
Go see him make a line.
So then they're going to rotate over to C, but because they staggered, they're just going to give up all the space, which basically means that C is like a very, very easy point to take now because they just let the other team tempo and grab all the space. So if you look at this from a space perspective, which is like what this VOD is mostly emphasis on, red has a line all the way pushed up to here. So there's just no way from a blue perspective to actually make anything happen here. It's like it's basically already lost at this initial rotate because they just lost the entire space in their backline. As long as red's able to maintain it. If red's not able to maintain it, you could swing it, but it looks like red's able to maintain that space.
Look at that left side clump, guys. Look at that left side clump. It could be us. Look at that left side
They
clump.
really need to wipe this clump if they want a chance of winning, to be honest. Because they lost all their space and need to create a hole and then exploit that gap. Instead, they crash just too late. They're just probably going to get staggered because they just have too many people. They look for a 50-50 here.
Should be us here,
Sometimes you have to take the 50-50. This is like one of those circumstances where they don't take a 50-50, they lose. If they take a 50-50, they have a chance to hold, so it makes sense. But it's like really sketchy.
They're moving top left. Keep chasing that clump,
They definitely didn't win the 50-50, but they didn't like hard lose it. It looked like it kind of stalemated, but because red has more people here, red has healer stepping on because their line is so high again. because like from a red perspective here, their line is up to here, so which means their healers can step on this edge for free. They're not super contested. At that point, red's always going to have passive tick. Blue is on a timer. Blue needs to look to wrap. They need to actually try to get a play. Usually from a wrap perspective, you would try to wrap bond and then kind of push behind, then look for point. Ideally, get the healers out of range. Realistically, that's not super possible.
Why did we lose right side like this? Where's our right side groups, boys?
They lost that right side because they let people rotate through their backline for free. It's like pretty obvious from looking at this. Like red just rotates back here for free. Red has a wrap here. Blue's line is in the middle. Blue gets sandwiched. There's no way blue is winning this. Once you get surrounded on both sides like this and they have ice showers behind you, there is just no way that you're going to be able to survive
Guys,
that.
the right side
The
close
current
is
meta.
very
The
lucky
last
now.
meta, it was possible with SNS because SNS basically had access to unlimited stamina if you knew what you were doing.
Can I get
Most
help top right
SNS
point?
did not, but it was possible to live that. He didn't have a Sacred
What
under
the
him,
fuck's
so
going
there's
on
like no
right
way
side
for him
front,
to
guys?
survive there. At this point, it's already
Response 4,
lost.
response 3.
We gotta retake this together with a bomb.
Response 4, response 3.
We gotta retake this together with a bomb.
Retake. Start right. Now. All crash point now. All crash point now. All crash point now.
Way too late.
Guys.
That's a stagger call. Way too late
Oh,
again.
no way, like...
It just looks sloppy. I was told it was like a ball diff. To be honest, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a ball diff. I would say it's a macro diff. Like they're just like off in terms of like when they need to be doing things. And like to emphasize that again, usually when you have a point, you like your 0 to 25% tick is kind of whatever. You're just playing for space. You don't really care about anything else. Usually 50 to 75% tick. That's or sorry, not 50. 25 to 75% tick is wrap. And then 75 to 100 is crash, but not necessarily an all-in crash. Like lower percentages, it would be like maybe a bruiser crashes. You have the IGVG step, but you wouldn't have your disruptor step. Like a 80%, maybe 85 is like when your disruptors probably should start to be looking to hit point, even though you don't really want them to. And then anything above like 90, 95 is an all-in.
On B gate, point groups. I want you on B gate here. Let's go.
I'm gonna stick with Bahp for like another 5 minutes, and I'll hop back to Bevu. You can see here how they're like overstacked in B. This is something I've started doing too with the cannons, where you put them like very deep. The reason why it's like nice to put them very deep there is a lot of times from a defense point of view, so I guess from a blue point of view, great swords like to drop down here, and they like to attack healers. Healers often, if they can kite all the way back here and get on the cannon, there's no way that they're going to be able to use some sort of cover against that healer. It's just going to be like difficult for them to get value, so it's just like a very conservative way to keep your cannon alive and let your healers live a little bit better. The con to this is your healers sometimes will end up here when your army is way up here, so that's over the 25-meter radius. Which basically means that they're not able to be consistently healing, except for Clap, which is just not going to get a ton of value.
Keep preparing that Seagate. Keep preparing that Seagate. They're gonna try and run someone through and disrupt
The interesting part about B chokes here too is the macro for ice showers. There's times we want an ice shower to be able to back up. There's times we want ice shower forward so that the other team cannot back up and they back into your ice shower. And a lot of that just depends off your tempo. We'll see if you can read the tempo.
Repair, okay?
I'm emphasizing ice showers a lot. Ice shower is the best ability in the game from an IGVG perspective because it controls tempo, and tempo is really important right now. Because if you could stop someone's like from utilizing ebb and flow and kind of pushing and pulling, absorbing the pressure when it comes in, backing off when they look to push, looking to push and trap them in. If you can kind of create that spot where you can control how the game flows, you often can create wipes very easily. You saw that the Warvada had earlier versus not as great of a company with in terms of like criminals, but like it was the same idea where I'd put an ice shower behind them before we pushed in. When we were trying to be more passive, I would put an ice shower behind us so that we can back up and they could not push into us. And that's just all off reading tempo, and that's why ice shower is like very strong.
They're gonna try and walk in through because of our repairs.
This is a very sketchy point fight.
Let's anchor this shit hard. Let's anchor this shit hard here.
They have the showers in the right spot, but this needs to be blown up so much faster than this. Like, you should not be able to let, like, a 10-man squad live here at all. This should have been blown up ages ago.
Finish off these kills on point. Finish off these kills on point. Respawns in
Finish off the kills. Nothing's even happened yet, mate.
Respawns now. Nice. Good kills on point. Good kills on point. Yeah, this is a useless breach for them. They're gonna stop the seaside repairs.
They're living too. Like, oh my god.
The guys disrupting repairs.
It's
Remember,
actually
bring
so
in the guns,
bad.
disrupting repairs, please.
They have healers
Your
getting
4
in,
flash
living
points
on
now.
the
Your 4 flash
sides. This
points.
is a very common healer tactic too that you see. Supple plays to hard punish it. Dropouts, I believe, plays to punish it to a degree. But healers like to sneak through here. There's a little box here you can stand on. Basically makes it so that melees can't harass you. BBIGs tend not to play in this like kind of space over here. BBIGs are more so like kind of back on this part. So those healers actually get to live there for free, even though it's like in an open space. The counter to that is
Spawn 220.
muskets, which most
I'm in
people
2.
don't slot.
Spawn now.
EU, I believe, slots 1 to 2 muskets. Last I was told. That's a really good
Each one is in
shower.
10.
The showers when they're below
One Vivix lead, and
50%
I'm gonna
are
look
like
top right at
guaranteed
points. In
kills. I
5,
think are so much
4,
better. Or not showers.
3,
That's a really good scream.
2, 1. Top right now. Top right, top right, top right.
So they get the kills, but it's
Be strong
before.
now.
You can see how
Alright.
people are like purposely trying to die before. So
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's fine.
like this is
I want
fine.
you natural
The
push.
weird thing from like from an NA perspective is usually you don't see people try to push through here and then spread out to gates. Usually it's the opposite where people will try to breach through this gate or the back gates and then push to B. And then collapse on B with showers behind, people pushing, kind of sandwich them in between, look to get kills like in this area. It's the opposite, so they're looking to make space off of B choke. The part that makes that kind of hard is B choke is probably the easiest choke to drop down in terms of kill squad, because it's just like you can hop down from either lane. Very easy for the healers have to like kind of push up to heal people in the choke. They can't like kind of play cover as easily because there's no
Each one is
corner.
10. Bike
So
left
it's just
again
like
if
I think it's a
you
little
don't
bit
have
more
guns.
sketchy
They might take
from
down
a healer perspective, but it's a different strategy. It should be fine. I'm gonna hop back to Bevu. Gonna hop to like 20 minutes on here. I'm gonna skip to the gates being down because there's nothing that's gonna happen. I like how they drop to protect this gate though. This is something you don't see in NA at all. By doing this, they effectively buy this entire time because people from the red side will not push while this gate is up. So by dropping early here and protecting these people that are out here, they're buying more time. They also still have their horns up. They're buying tons of time off of this. Usually you see people go from getting into fort to starting to breach on NA in about 2 minutes. If people actually drop down and committed to that dropping down and we supported them from the high ground with ranged casters, you should be able to elongate that time to 5 to 10 minutes from a 2-minute time, which just basically makes it so that you're more likely to hold overall. So I think this is really smart. It is a little sketchy though, because if red has tempo and you drop down, you will get farmed. But if blue has tempo and you drop down, it's very, very good. Because if red has tempo here, you're gonna get pushed up into the gate. You're gonna get caught on the gate. You're not gonna be able to get through the gate. You're just naturally gonna die. So I guess that might be why they go for pushes on B first, right? Because their outside gates are losing so hard, so they have to push through B. They have to try to play for that ball diff. This is the part where I think it's a little sketchy to push through B, though, because you can drop down these healers. To be honest, I would actually physically drop here, make it easier to land your shots. Or I think it would make more sense to physically drop there. There's no one else that's down there to really protect them. There's no reason to really be up on this high ground, to be honest, unless you're like looking to pad point, I guess. Or at least you would expect like great swords to be dropping there and looking to go on the healers, but you don't really see that drop at all. By being on the high ground though, they're able to respond to the C push a little bit better, so I guess there's that. They still have the horns up, which is kind of wild to think that they haven't been broken already. He's just back to getting value. I'm gonna fast forward until there's an actual point fight, or like a fight that's like okay. Most of this VOD I wanted to focus on the outside of point. Inside fort I don't think is nearly as difficult from a macro perspective. You see very early how they get that point tick though. Healers are pushing through for free. I guess by pushing through B early, it does put the defense on a timer. Like this is 50% ticked already. You already have to start looking at point, which is the plus side. But the con side is I think you're gonna naturally lose space. You're looking to 50-50 to point a lot sooner. So it's like kind of fake tick on B, to be honest, to a certain degree. This is 75% tick though. This is not fake tick anymore. They have to start looking at point very, very heavily. And while this is happening, the other parts of red team's army can get through for free. Red team being the par army. That is way, way too close to be letting. Wait, what? It should be a crash like here. Like here, it should be a crash. But they let that get like very, very, very high tick. That's a little sketchy in my eyes. But to see what's going on from a shot clock perspective at that point, because I'm very surprised they allowed that to happen. Never mind, not going to see what's going on from a shot clock perspective at that point. Oh, nope, we are.
Boys, okay? Respawns in 3.
Come on, bud.
Okay.
There we go.
Get out, get out, get out. Nice.
So you see they blow B wide open. There's no one
Respawns in 20.
contesting the
Alright, group
red
4, I
team's
need you to
healers,
crash
so they're
points. I
able
need
to
you
take
crash
the
points
space
right
for
away,
free.
people. Group 4, I need you on
They have
points right away
healers
here.
pushing up
Group
like
4
very,
come
very
point, group 4 come
aggro
point.
because they have more of that support in B choke. Point looks very, very sketchy right now. No one's playing around the SNS. No one's
And
playing in the
disrupt the point healers
Sacreds.
right away, please.
I think
Disrupt the point
if
healers right
I
away. Respawns in
remember
3.
correctly,
Respawns
Mangoed also has who's attacking right now. They have 2 SNSs, and by having those 2 SNSs, they're able to like really prevent this kind of giant clump here from dying. So because they could have an SNS that plays up here, they have an SNS that plays up here. That's basically going to cover this whole area. That's going to cover this whole area. There's not really a spot that won't have access to that extra
2,
fortify. So
1.
even though they're more
Respawns
clumped
now.
up, they're probably going to be able
Alright,
to
guys, we're gonna all
survive
need to
point
crash point
crashes
soon.
like
We're gonna all
fairly
need to crash
hard.
point soon. Everyone crash point now. Everyone crash point.
That
Everyone
being
crash point.
said,
Everyone crash point.
usually at a 75% tick mark, if you're being smart from an offense point of view, you're no longer looking to play on this point. You're looking to step out for a second, get behind them, so that you have kind of a point clump in the center here with some ice showers around, and then you have another line on this outside that will drop ice showers around. So when blue team steps in, they step into this space. You trap them. You look to nuke them when they're in the middle, both of you, and you try to
No,
get
we're
kills
alive. We're
that
alive.
way.
Everyone crash point, guys. Everyone crash point. All
If
mediums
you
on point.
sit
All mediums on
here,
point. All mediums on point.
the disadvantage that you're gonna have from a like a defending this like attacking but defending the point perspective is you have to look out on every single angle, and you're just naturally a little bit more clumped. So that means the other team's damage is effectively going to be doing more because it's going to be hitting more people because you're in a smaller space. Versus the other team will be more spread. They're going to be looking to hit you. They get to choose their own battles. So basically, by getting to the point tick early here, you force the defenders to have to make a decision, but you've inherently put yourself in a bad spot.
We're gonna look for stack soon. We're gonna look for stack soon. All mediums on point here. Everyone crash point. Everyone crash point.
This is a
We win this.
very,
We win
very
this.
late call.
We win this.
That being said,
They're
usually
probably
the
gonna
team
look
that
for stacking.
crashes
Don't push
second in
stacking.
this
Don't push
situation
stacking.
on
Just all
point
mediums
tends
on.
to
Just all
win
mediums on.
because
Don't
the
push
other
stacking.
team will have their
Don't
healers
push
step
stacking.
up on the point, the healers will get crashed on, the
All
healers
mediums
will
on.
die. So
Respawns in 10.
it's greedy, but I understand why
Okay,
he's
boys, but we're
calling for
being
it
way
so
too
late.
fucking lazy right now.
It's
We're literally
just
being way
like
too
they should
fucking
not be
lazy.
able to play that
Like,
free in
legit.
B at
We
all.
had
Like they
everyone
should be
alive.
contested that entire time.
We're literally being just way too fucking
It
lazy.
looks like they're doing like a 3-stack on B from an offense point of view, and then B has
Respawns
2
in
groups
30.
on defense sort of thing, or maybe even like a 4 or 5 stack on
They
B.
could have
Like
never
it's
won
very,
off of that
very,
pick.
very big on B.
Wake the fuck up, please. Stop fucking payphoning at your gate once you've done the anchoring.
All right, I'm gonna skip forward to the next push. Assuming New World behaves with me. Are vines necessary for an army to be more lethal? They dropped vines and went with bile instead. Bile Stoneform Bis. I think vines are very, very good, but they're situational. The best part of vines right now is honestly the stagger. The rend is okay, but it's mostly the stagger. You can stop people from like popping a cleanse and stuff like that, and it's very easy to see vines have a very big impact at times, but it's not super consistent. I do think you need to have like 3-ish biles though. It's like about the sweet spot. Maybe like between 3 and 5 biles, I'd say. Like I think cannon's inherently like a pretty bad ultimate. I think bile is almost always better than cannon. The best part about cannon is you can animation cancel out of abilities. For most classes, that doesn't really matter. Okay, Bevu's a powder confirmed. He's checking scoreboard mid-war. Bevu, for people who don't know, I think is supposed to be a probably top 3 fire staff from NA. Some people would say it's the best. Based off this VOD, I would not say he's that scary looking, to be honest. I think he looks good, but I don't think he looks insane, but he's also on 150 ping. This is breaking siege. This looks like a pretty stacked C push. Gonna fast forward a bit. So they're not taking like any pressure off the C, right? So NA is like the opposite. For EU here, they're waiting on the C gate for them to get pressure on the point, which will pull the defenders. So you have like red here, you have defenders up top. Defenders look to point, then the reds push, and then with that they take all their space. So it's like the opposite where NA you'll see the sides push in, the sides get stacked heavy, and then from there people will start stepping to point. The part that NA that makes it very, very hard for this to work is because people drop on the B healers very, very quickly. So if you were to push here very, very aggro, then you have people on the defense side. So if red pushes here really aggro, you have people on the defense side that hop down to go on the healers here. The healers are contested. Now you have to have red people come and peel. They're not really in an ideal spot because they're not on point. They're not in this clump fight. It kind of creates a spot where you build like a big pocket of red people in this B choke. Very, very easy to get a point wipe on that from a defender perspective. I don't see that drop happening. I'm surprised that drop's not happening because it doesn't look like they have a lot of like Dex people in that B choke. But that's why this strat doesn't really work super well in NA typically. Bevu's just back to pitting people. He's trying to control this top space. If you lose this top, it often can be very, very hard to regain it, and then your healers are in a very bad spot. But it also depends if ranged people are able to get up top. If ranged people aren't up top and it's like melee people up top, it doesn't matter nearly as much. But if you have ranged bows up here that are 3-2-1ing your healers, or not necessarily 3-2-1ing, but like targeting the same healer over and over again so that the healer typically dies, then it's just very, very difficult to get value. This keg strat, where you put a keg to prevent people from walking up, is a pretty new strat, I would say. But it works pretty well. Dropouts yesterday, I think we had a double keg wall at one point where we had 2 kegs to block off the stairs at the lower part and 2 at the higher part, so there's no way to get up the staircase. We had that on a few of the staircases versus supple. It was kind of funny. Or that wasn't versus supple. That was a different war. But no, that's a common strat. Free casting, just getting value. You're tempted to call this pad, but you can see he's fragging. So if he's fragging, I wouldn't say it's pad. Like you can see his target priority is generally in the right spot. From a space perspective, if you control top, you can basically always hit point from the sides. I'm just surprised they aren't looking to drop on B a little bit more. I had a little bit of water there. I'm going to hop back to Micah's perspective for the next push. Assuming the VOD will cooperate. If it does not cooperate, it does not cooperate.
I want you to close the point right away. Before I want you to close the point right
Went too far.
This is dangerous respawn.
Ideally, don't want to see it when he's dead.
They're gonna get a little bit of tech at the start here because we have a few point players dead, but it's whatever.
There's like a noteworthy thing
It's
too with
actually
this
looks
patch
like
of usually when you die, it seems like you have like a pretty consistent like 20 seconds before you actually get into the game. Because the game's just not been performing as well. Maram was crashed 2 times in the last 2 days during wars.
Nice.
Uh,
Let's actually look the crash point, guys. Let's actually look the
It's
crash
been
point.
pretty
Look at the
bad.
right side of point. They're actually all around point. They're hard stacking. They're hard stacking. They're hard stacking. Find your angles and let's look for something on point. Respawn
I don't
in
like
20.
the scrim at all.
Find your angles and look for something on point, boys. I'm in tomb. Got it now.
From a space perspective though, you see how red's like kind of exploded through here. They've gotten healers in, they have people on the point, they have healers off the point, they have kill squad off the point, like that. They're kind of everywhere. That's something that you don't see a lot of NA companies do, is like really push through here heavily, take that space, exist in this space, try to control it for a second while they're getting the point pressure. If people were able to do that consistently, it's like pretty solid value. You're just going to pull more aggro to point
Respawns
and
in
live.
10. Nice, good kills, good kills. We forced them out. Nice, good job.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Respawns now, respawns now. Respawns now, let's find kills here. Let's find kills, let's find kills.
They run armor breaker.
They have backstage.
I'm an Armor
Yeah,
Breaker
they have
fan at
healers
this point.
casting
I
them
think
back still. They have healers
it's
casting
really
them back
annoying
still.
to play
We need to
against,
push
and
that
it
out. We need to
pretty
push that out. We need to push
consistently
that out.
you can make plays with it.
Alright, start hard stepping. Start hard stepping. Start hard stepping. Start hard stepping, boys. Start hard stepping.
Why are they letting us get so
You need to
ticked?
start hard stepping now. You need to start hard stepping.
Oh, this is sketchy. They don't have
Every
space.
bruiser mid should be stepping. He respawns in 30.
They actually might lose
No,
this.
no. I'm down. All mediums on point. All mediums on point. All mediums on point. 23-second respawn. All mediums on point. All mediums on point. Look for stacks soon. All mediums on point.
Yeah,
All mediums
they.
on point. All mediums on point. All
Is this
mediums on
it?
point. boys. All mediums on point. All mediums on point.
Full stack, full stack.
Wait. All mediums on point. We need to full stack it. We need to full stack it. Just all mediums on point here. All
We have
mediums on
to
point.
grab this.
Yeah, we have it. We have it. Nice.
The part here that's very, very good from a shot
Respawn,
caller
respawn
perspective,
quickly.
you notice how he's saying all mediums on point? Like, there's a difference between doing an all in and doing like an all medium in, because then you still have your healers healing you, you
Respawns in
still
two,
have a
three.
chance.
One.
Once your healers commit the
Respawns now,
point,
respawns now,
like
respawns now, you can
it
step
is
off, you can
very,
step
very
off, guys.
desperate. You're very likely to lose there if you don't win a point fight, a point wipe in the next like 2 to 3
I
seconds.
don't know why we wait until it's 90% tick to do this shit, but it's fine.
Yeah, he's right about that too. It should be happening at like 80 to 90% tick, not that high.
Alright, build up your archers again. They
Like you
have
want it to be later, but like
two
you
more
don't want it
breaches
to be
in,
that late.
to be honest.
That's way too sketchy. Like if the other team all in there and the Bahp didn't react, like they very easily could win that.
20 seconds.
Don't die on the fucking B gate right now, guys.
That's a
Just
very,
build up your
very
archers,
conservative
please.
ice
Build up your
shower. It
archers.
should be much
Don't fucking
higher.
waste your CDs now either. Don't waste your CDs now
Not
either.
from Bahp, but from his teammate.
So we can actually stuff the gate. Respawns in 10. They're gonna start pre-beaching now on this timer. Pre-pot here, pre-pot. Respawns in 4, 3.
This is the
2,
problem with putting the
1.
kegs too close, is if you put a keg too close, it can be hit by the ice storm, and ice storm basically kills a keg. So that's why you want it like a little bit further out usually. Kegging the chokes is very effective for the pushes though.
Dingling's
It's
pre-beaching,
also
let
pretty
it be.
commonplace now for IGVGs to scout the corners with the showers to deny the keg.
Keep the rest
At
of them
least at
outside.
the
Keep
highest
rest of them
level.
outside.
Or you'll like kind of
They're gonna
third
start to
person
walk
peek
in
it
now
and
a
then
little
drop
bit.
a shower there if you see it. I would like to see more showers in this beat choke. That's a good shower.
I'm in tomb. Come on now.
This is
Careful on that
sketchy.
big
This
if
is
you
so
get light
sketchy. Okay, you got the pre-pot off. You should be fine. Needs to drop the Oblivion though.
We're gonna need the fast collapse from the side.
If you drop the
We're gonna need
Oblivion
fast
there,
collapse
you
from the side.
strip all the empower stacks, and then you can
gonna need
combo
something.
that with your
We're
other
getting hard dog
abilities
outside of
into a
point.
weaken. If you didn't get that light roll there, he's probably dead.
Nice, let's look the collapse now. Let's look the collapse, guys. Let's look the collapse early before it's 90% tick, please. 1. Respawns now. Look left side of point. Look left side, left side, left side.
Okay, I don't know about collapsing at 25% though. Like you could have Great X Warhammers
left
look
side
at
point,
25% point, but you don't want more than that looking at 25%.
They've moved right side of point now.
Once
I'm in tomb
your
now.
Great Swords have to look at point, you're not usually in a good spot.
Let's get down healers too if we see any. The point healers in specific.
From a space perspective though, you see how quickly like red explodes and takes the space. That's the part that's like really, really interesting to me. So like people like they go through B and they really go through B. Like they're shooting for dirt on both sides. They're trying to get through. They're trying to exist in that space. And you'll see healer step
We're gonna
too.
need the fast collapse
Like
from the
after
side,
this
please. We're gonna
initial
need
push,
the
blue
fast
gets
collapse from
pushed
the side.
back, right? There's like this pocket of space here,
I'm
and
gonna
you'll see the
need something.
healers like
I'm
push
getting hard
up,
dog
and then
left
they're
side
gonna
point.
go through in a second.
10 seconds.
Like right there. So you saw the healer on this side, this guy up here. Like once there's this pocket of space, he's inching, and then he just goes. And he goes takes this dirt, he takes the space, basically makes it so if anyone wants to contest them, they're not on one spot now, they're gonna be spread out around the point. Makes it much harder to do something about that. The con to this is off a respawn, he's just gonna be getting hit, or she, but it's just like difficult. Yeah,
Nice,
Bio
let's
and
look the
OPR
collapse
is
now.
OP
Let's look the
because
collapse,
people
guys.
don't have
Let's look the collapse early
cleanse.
before it's 90% tick, please. 1. Respawns now. Look left side
River.
of point. Look left side, left side, left side. Look left
Yeah,
side.
they
point,
have
guys.
to look
Quickly.
towards point now. Again, it's kind of too late to be honest. Like when they're backing up here, is from a blue perspective, they're backing up like linearly. If you want to be smart about it, instead of backing up directly back, they should be backing up at an angle and trying to hold this space. The reason why you would do that is from a red perspective. Their healers are back here, right? So if a red team pursues this, they're going to LOS their healers. The healers are going to have to step to this open space at this bottom part of their choke, which is very, very easy to collapse on. So I would say you want to generally
They've
back
moved
up to
right
the
side of point
sides.
now.
The con to the
Point
backing up
far
to the
now.
sides is they're going to give point tick. But from like a not on point group perspective, but from a quad
get
group
down healers
perspective,
too if
that's
we see
like
any.
probably a more ideal spot to back to
The
to
point healers
deny
in
that
specific.
kind of healer wrap. Yeah, I called your name about the
Alright.
bile thing. I was like, Yeah, Bile really good no PR
Start
because no
stepping, guys. Start
cleanse.
stepping, guys. Start stepping. 4, 6,
But
3. Start
War,
stepping,
it's
guys.
like, it's
Respawn for 20.
situational.
Just start stepping. We need to fucking kill them before the respawn comes in. We're not dead. Start stepping before it's 90%, man.
Yeah, I don't know what's
Turn
going on
around.
there from his ball.
Fuck me, why are we so late?
He was right.
All mediums on point here. All mediums on point. All mediums on point. All mediums on point. We're gonna look for stacks. All
I think
mediums
he's
on point.
off point, technically.
All mediums on point.
Okay, now he's on.
5, 4, 3, 2.
They're making a really good argument to run 2 SNSs off this floor.
What the fuck is wrong, guys?
I could definitely see why you'd want 2 SNSs if you're getting that high tick. Because at that point, you just need to win one 50-50, and honestly, the best weapon at winning a 50-50 from a giant point fight perspective is an SNS. And the next best is probably an AoE healer that's like raid style with orb, but like you're not going to see those existing anymore, so that's just not a commonplace. The only reason why I say that is you're able to out AoE heal most of the damage coming in. At that point, your army's more likely to survive. That being said, most people insta-die to a debt push when they're dying, and SNS is the only class that could really help out versus that, unless you get passive Fortify to people, which comes from Fortified Sacred Ground and comes from Orb, which got buffed recently. So both those are also really good. I'm going to hop back over to Bevu for a second, because I have forgotten about Bevu existing. We'll go down to like maybe 5 minutes here. Look at this next point fight. You see how he has kegs on the stairs? He's kind of denying that like early wrap up top. Yeah, run Bile, don't run cannon. That's not value. Bile, you just huck it and it gets value. It's like very, very easy. Or you go detonate still. I see. Oh, he died to the spear. Spear on top. Except he timed it with the respawn, so it literally does nothing. Oh, you're talking about Armor Breaker? Yeah, Armor Breaker chunks too. Armor Breaker broken, but not really. But it's very, very strong. You ready, Nub? Isn't the war in an hour? I got forced off again. Wait. Are there ice pylons there? Is that why they're not dropping? I gotta see this again. Yeah, that's like 3 ice pylons hitting this dude for like 3 to 4k. Yeah, you can see him right there. That is interesting tech. That's like a... Oh god, I'm really gonna go into this. With Torb and Overwatch, a lot of people would waste turret at first, and they would throw it pre-fight, and it would just get broken, and no one would actually get value out of the turret. And then the better Torbs, like when they actually got played in like an OWL level, like a T1 level, like a professional esports level, they would put the turret down after they took space to like kind of hold that space to deny people from actually contesting that space later. So that turret, from a competitive Overwatch perspective, makes a lot more sense than what I usually see from Ice Pylons. Like, Ice Pylon normally doesn't really do that much, but in a spot where you're trying to protect healers, that makes complete sense, and it's really, really cool tech. That being said, I imagine Storm is generally more valuable because it could force out Stam. But Ice Pylon lasts for 45 seconds, so it's like a pretty long time. How do you just wake up? What time did you go to bed? This is value, but it's not gonna like do anything. He's not hitting the healer. He should be hitting the guy that's inside. Oh my god, how many kegs do you have? The kegs buy a lot of time, though. Like, you see what the keg does there, right? Like, it causes everyone to stack, because they have to break one keg at a time, then they get all grouped up, they go up together, and then it's just very easy pickings. And the other thing that this makes it happen is that they have to go up the side over here and do a very long rotation around, which they don't have time to do because they're forcing point early, so they have to do like a quick breach, and on a quick breach you have to go up these stairs, so. Like if you were to run around the entire fort, you would not be there in time for the next breach. They're letting this get way too high tick again. Like 75% off passive tick? Like, come on, man. This should be not getting more than like 25% off passive tick. You see how he's looking at the healers now because the healers are stepping down in this dirt area? And all of a sudden he has like a lot less value because they're being a little bit more spread out, right? And his team has to step to point because the point has high ticks, so. Good combination there. They lost the space control for the healers, they lost the edge. I'm gonna drop. And honestly, it looks like Red's kind of trolling because they're getting high tick, but they're never like stepping off point to control that space and swinging back to point. They're kind of letting their healers like exist in that space. The respawns happen, their healers get attacked, and their point gets hit, and they don't actually look to help their healers and swing back to point. They're not playing the ebb and flow well from a defending the point perspective on attack. There's a lot of cannons outside B. Or ballistas or whatever. So he's ran cannon and he's gotten 0 kills with the cannon. I don't think cannon's that good, dude. A lot of the range people that play cannon, I think are, to be honest, I think they're patters, and they don't understand that Bile single-handedly like turns fights. And like there's been like 4 or 5 50-50s right now. This guy had Bile, like those probably don't get that close. That being said, usually the fire staff, it seems like detonates generally what people prefer, but I think the second best ult is not cannon, it's probably Bile. I think if you want to argue for like what's the third best ult after like Bile, like it's probably the Chompy, it's not cannon. Chompers actually like can be really good versus healers because it staggers them and it's going to slow them and pull them together, so they're not going to be able to roll out very, very quickly. By chompers, I mean the Devourer, but it's more fun to call it Chompy. It's also something that most people don't have, though, because most people have not beaten the raid. Yappers, you have gold Devour yet? If you're still in here. Nothing has really happened here at all. Like they're just passively regrouping for way too long. This is their last push. That's some good. That's a good ice storm right there. That buys them time. Which is the best chompers? The one that does more damage. The problem with the knockdown ones is it knocks them down kind of in a random direction. It makes it kind of hard to look for a follow-up off of it. That being said, the interruptibles may be nichely like actually useful. I just don't see it being super powerful. Like I think if you were a healer and you wanted to run it, maybe the interruptible's like kind of nice, because then you could free cast. But that would be like the only spot where I could see that interruptible being kind of useful, unless you're like maybe an IGVG and you're like on point. You want to make sure you drop an ice shower. Interruptible could be nice, but I would say generally the one that does more damage is a little bit better. It's not insane damage, but it's enough damage and enough disruption on a healer where it can result in kills, I think. You got to keep in mind they buffed the damage by 15%, and I'm pretty sure that variant doubles the damage that does. So it's like a 30% damage buff, effectively, compared to what it was on the first PTR test run. This is really good value, but I don't know why he hasn't been looking at this the whole time. Like, I'd be thinking that from a Bevu perspective, like, oh, I did not want to hit delete, but he'd want to be like rotating over here, and then like looking to be hitting people from that like kind of short off angle on the backside and looking to drop sooner. That being said, it looks like they just managed to stagger these guys for a solid like 3 minutes here at the end. Nothing really happened. Which, good for them, but I'm surprised that they're able to get so many pushes. To be honest, most of the pushes look fake to me, but I think it's because from an NA perspective, if you push through B first, you almost never win a war that way. You have to get pressure off the side gates, and they just won the side gates super, super hard from a power perspective, Mango did not look close there. We get stats at the end. No, wait, Kirio's on top again? Guys! You're not allowed to have Kirio be on top in every region. No way they put Kirio on AoE healer too. Oh my god. Is Kirio actually on AoE? Yeah, Kirio's on AoE. Fucker. But like, I guess in summary, I probably won't go through this with Bevu or with Bahp at the end because I don't think it was like that insane value at the end. But the tick percent thing I think is like really important that they're kind of messing up from a macro perspective. Like when you want to actually step to point, when you don't want to step to point. I think Ice Shower usage is just terrible from an army as a whole. Not just from Bahp, but it just did not look like it didn't really tie to tempo, and he wanted to tie to tempo to actually get like massive value with it. And then the other part I guess was the lack of wrap. Like they didn't really wrap really super effectively, and then there's like that little point on the inside floor where it was like you could use the LOS to kind of prevent healers from getting through for free. But it was like kind of a more niche minor point compared to the other ones. It was still like pretty solid overall. I'm surprised it was that close because I believe the other wars weren't really that close at all. But definitely some opportunities from the attackers to win. Defense looked kind of lazy from a ball perspective, to be honest, but it happened.